You are listening to Peak One Sports.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Sports Page on the Peak One Sports Network. I am Ashton Nix, sitting here with Dan Boyer. Chris out today, had some coaching obligations that he had got with beforehand with his job. So, I mean, hey man, go coach. This is not near as important as molding young minds and young men. So, but Dan, you're definitely going to be here because, as we talked last week, the Cowboys have not lost since we've had you on here. You jumped on here because you wanted to complain about Dak and say, yeah, he had an okay game, but they lost, and really gave it to him, which was a valid opinion. That makes me like, Dan, hey, you idiot. No. I get it. Very frustrating. But I mean, as with, not to be the pessimist, but as with Roma, we've had times like this where they just can't lose, and we'll see if it's any different come playoff time. But yeah, had to have you back on, and maybe once the Cowboys do lose, if they do lose again, maybe you just take one week break and reset
kick me
it.
out of here, yeah.
Yeah, just reset it a little bit. Which is not to look too far ahead, but it's a hard road ahead. There's this little, I think, 4-week stretch, if you don't want to count the Commanders in week 18.
Yeah.
4-week stretch of really rough road, and they took care of the first quarter of that last night, or at the time of this recording last night. It'll be a couple days later once this is posted. But before we get into that, let's shout out to our sponsors, Betalytics. Don't bet with your gut. Never bet with your gut. Let Betalytics do the work. Go to Betalytics.com, use promo code PEAK1, and you get 25% off your account when you sign up. So, Dan, just overall, before we get too deep into it, what are your thoughts on what the Cowboys were able to accomplish in that game against Philly?
Like when we talked about it last week and everything, I think you and I were both anticipating like a much more high power offense, kind of dueling it out back and forth. And this was just not that game. As a Cowboys fan, I absolutely love seeing them just beat down on the Eagles, get that tie for first place and everything. It's amazing. As a football fan, though, the game was a little bit kind of lackluster in the sense that like it was definitely one-sided. The Cowboys took an early lead in the first quarter. I think it was 10-0, and really never gave up the lead. There were no lead changes or anything. And I mean, again, like as a Cowboys fan, it was awesome to see this defense just smother the Eagles offense. Like Hertz didn't really have a whole lot going on as far as his ability to scramble. They really contained him pretty well with that. Man, all the turnovers from our defense, which are always going to give your offense the opportunity to go out and score more points, which is the name of the game. Points on the board, man. That's how you win these games. But for a defense to just give an offense like this many opportunities with the interceptions and the fumbles in this game against the Eagles, man, like really what a game. It's kind of funny because I feel like I've been telling myself like, like as a regular kind of football fan, analyst type person, a pretty lackluster game, like not very
Yeah.
exciting at all. But as a Cowboys fan, I loved every minute of it. I was very, very surprised that the Eagles weren't able to score. What they got 13, and the one touchdown was the fumble, wasn't it? The fumble
Yeah.
recovery from Dak. So like their offense wasn't able to get anything going, which was just amazing to see from the defensive side of the ball, which gives me a lot of like high hopes for these like two really tough games we got coming up, going into Bills and into Dolphins territory the next 2 weeks before we actually get to come home. And I mean, our offense is, firing, working really well, but obviously we're not as good on the road as we are at home. But
Not as good on
after watching our
grass
defense
as
play this
well.
week, man, yeah. But after watching this defense play like this week, I'm I'm pretty excited to see us go into New York next week and play the Bills. But well, Buffalo, yeah.
Yeah, going back to that fumble by Dak, I mean, it give him, I think it was maybe one more second. It was probably going to be a touchdown for the Cowboys. Because you go back and look, uh, and even Dak alluded to this in the press conference. It was all on him that he thinks their team could have scored 50 if he doesn't do that, because you had Brandon Cooks wide open, and that's why he kind of, you wonder, why didn't you throw the ball away? Why didn't you? He saw that and he was just trying to get that extra second, which he couldn't, because Fletcher Cox was closing in on him too quickly. But other than that, I mean, you take that where you have your quarterback fumble and the defense score a touchdown, which bravo to the Cowboys just to turn it. Like they did not let the Eagles keep the momentum. But you had that. You had another play where CD Lamb just dropped it in the end zone. I think that ended up being a field goal. But you just have things like this happen that are typical Cowboy things to happen. You feel like, but and you're playing a 10-2 team, but you still win by 20. A 10-2 rivalry team, nonetheless. That's why this feels a little different. Like I said, even we had it with Dak and with Romo, that there were seasons, there were years where it's just like their year. They're, quarterback's MVP candidate. You're just playing out of your mind in some instances, just blowing out other teams. Pick your random stat for the year. The Cowboys are just balling out, and then it remains to be seen, like I said earlier, if this is a different year once the playoffs come along. But we were all predicting this to be a close game. Not in my wildest imagination. Even a great team and a rival, they typically, it doesn't turn out to be blowouts, but it's like what the Cowboys have been doing week in and week out. And now a lot of the, I'll say controversy, a lot of the criticism for the Cowboys is you hadn't beat anybody. Well, now you've beat the team with the best record. I understand they were hurt and they weren't. There's this idea that the Eagles are hurt and not playing their best football. When I think this is just what the Eagles team is. I think they were overhyped anyways. Probably shouldn't have been 10-2 in the first place after you saw them lose to the Jets. They got blown out by the 49ers. Same as the Cowboys. Cowboys had that bad loss against Arizona. You barely beat the Chiefs. You're just barely beating these teams. And they could easily, be like 8-5 right now.
Sure. I mean, a big part too is I'm sure the Chiefs are wanting to go back on this too, but a lot of flags and penalties kind of helped Philly beat out the Chiefs a couple of weeks ago, and then they just barely beat the Bills in overtime last week. That was a crazy
Yeah.
close game. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the Eagles played great football in that second half to really, take it to overtime. And it was unfortunate that Josh Allen and the Bills weren't able to capitalize once they went into overtime, because you and I even kind of touched on, the overtime rules are a little lopsided in the fact that, like, if you win the coin toss, you should win the game. You should make it down the field and score your touchdown and get off the field. And it was unfortunate that, Josh Allen and the Bills weren't able to do that, once again. And because he's, 0-6 in overtime and everything. But, it's also crazy to look at the Eagles and almost like how badly they've played these last 2 weeks and how badly they've lost these games. Like we're saying, like, I don't think anybody really anticipated this game being a 20-point blowout. The
Yeah.
over under for the game was 3.5 points. We talked about that last week. I think, I anticipated the game to have probably like closer to a 7 to 10 point spread. I figured it'd at least be like a touchdown separating the two, but I did not expect, like three scores. Like that was absolutely insane. And honestly, I'm a little torn between, like, is it late season? Are some of these Eagles players just kind of like worn down? Is the O line just not quite holding up the way it was earlier in the season? Or are we talking about, like, have other teams in the NFL like kind of cracked the code and figured them out? And the only thing they really got going for them now is that tush push. It's the only thing that nobody's able to like absolutely stop. But it seems like in these last few weeks, both the Cowboys and the 49ers, I guess, have really kind of figured out how to like contain Hurts and make him make bad decisions as far as like trying to throw the ball and fit in these like tight windows. But again, too, I mean, it also says to me like these defenses are playing like great football. And let's be honest too, I think the 49ers and the Cowboys are probably the two best NFC teams in the league right now.
Yeah.
If it's not one, it'll be the other in the Super Bowl, I think. So I mean, tough matchups for the Eagles these last 2 weeks in that sense. But it almost feels like they've kind of figured it out and are able to stop and contain the Eagles. So it makes it a little bit harder for them, I think, to close out the season. Um, the worst part really being for the Cowboys in their matchup. I think they were saying last night too, if the Eagles win out, like they still win the NFC East, just because of the way the tiebreakers work or something
Yeah.
in the league. So
Yeah, because if both teams went out, Philadelphia would have beaten the Giants twice, I think, and then
yeah,
Cowboys would beat the Commanders, so they would have the same division record, so it would go down to conference wins. And the Cowboys have 3 losses to NFC teams. The Eagles now have 2 losses. But somebody was saying on Facebook, like if you need the Eagles to lose more games, and not necessarily. So let's just throw a scenario out there. The Cowboys go 3-1, the Eagles go 3-1, still the same record. But if the Eagles lose to, like, let's say Seattle, that's an NFC game, and the Cowboys lose the same this week to Buffalo, that's an AFC game. I don't know what the tiebreaker is after that, but like the top 4
yeah,
tiebreakers, they're all still tied. That'll bring the
yeah.
Eagles to 3 NFC losses. So it's getting pretty wild. But yeah, it's yet to see, is this just what the Eagles are now? Have they got figured out? Are they hurt? Which is just part of the game. Some crazy stats after this game. Cowboys obviously have now won 15 straight home games. The Eagles, that was the first time the Eagles went a game without scoring an offensive touchdown in 6 years. The last time was against the Cowboys. Brandon Aubrey, obviously, I mean, just amazing kicker. It's crazy how that story, and I'll give you an opportunity to tell that timeline, that story in a second. But he becomes the first player in NFL history with a 59 or 2 field goals over 58 yards. He kicked a 60-yarder and a 59-yarder. He also added another 50-yarder and a 45-yarder, I think.
45, yeah.
Just ridiculous stats in this game. Dak, who says he had an off game, who it did look like he was a little bit off, but he still goes for 270 yards, a couple touchdowns, no picks, did have the fumble. But Brandon Aubrey, I know you sent us that message. Kind of go through that timeline of how he's turned out to be this rookie phenom, this 28-year-old rookie phenom for the Cowboys.
Yeah, it was crazy to watch last night. Man, if you have him on your fantasy team, he scored like 20 points as a kicker,
Yeah.
which is insane. You know what I mean? Just off of these field goals and everything. But yeah, I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I didn't like miss anything. But what an incredible Cinderella story, in my opinion. To go from like kind of rejected. He was drafted by Major League Soccer in what was it, 2017? Yeah. Uh, Released after one season. Then he moved to the United Soccer League, was released after a season there. He was a computer engineer in 2018 when he meets a coach, starts training with a kicking coach in 2019 through 2022, ends up in the USFL last season, and then this year with the Cowboys sets an NFL record, like you said, for kicking 258 plus yard field goals in a single game, which is just insane. But like you said, man, a 60 yarder, a 59, a 45, and then another 50 to cap off the day, plus 3 for 3 on PATs.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like that, what a performance by a kicker. It's not often that you come out like singing the praises of a kicker, and especially in a game where you had like a 20-point blowout, the offense played well. It's not every day you'd probably still give your game ball to the kicker, because what a performance, like, and like you said, like Dak had a good game. He said himself he was a little off and everything. Maybe it wasn't like, the greatest career performance for him, but I mean, he's having a career season. So I mean, and he wasn't off by any means. I mean, like you said, he had the one fumble, but no interceptions, the 2 touchdowns. He's got the best touchdown interception ratio in the league right now. So I mean, he's obviously doing something right. And kind of like you said earlier too, that first time I came on here, I was definitely not singing Dak Prescott's praises in that first kind of episode I was in coming off the loss. I was definitely very critical, and man, he's just been absolutely annihilating the numbers every time he goes out there. It's been a lot of fun to watch, to be honest. I'm still not like a huge Dak Prescott fan, but there's very little for me to actually kind of complain about right now based on like what his performance has been. I mean, he's performing very, very well. We're on this what is it, 5-game win streak right now, 15 games straight at home. We're averaging almost 40 points. I saw this after the Eagles game, 39.9 points at home per game. That's insane.
Yeah. On Brandon Aubrey too, he's pretty much had been going
a big part of that.
Yeah, he's been playing since, like, when does the USFL start? April. So he went through all April to whenever that ends.
Yeah, no college experience, never kicked in college.
Yeah, and I mean, just his energy level to not really have an off season, or to be able to rest in your off season. I know they said they don't really practice kickoffs because they want to make sure he stays fresh. And as much as this Cowboys team has been scoring, he's obviously has more extra point attempts than most kickers. He's probably, I haven't looked at that, but he's probably right up there, number one. And then kickoffs.
I think he's missed a few PATs.
No, he has, but I'm just talking about attempts in total.
But yeah, as far as like attempts, especially for field goals and everything, I think you're right. I think he's
field goals, extra points, and then if you scored this much, there's more kickoffs. And I don't know what the record is for most touchbacks in the season, but I know I heard something that he's like going to blow it out of the water. He's on pace to just blow it out of the water because it's pretty much all he does is kick.
For sure.
Touchbacks.
I love stats like that, man. Like,
yeah, so he doesn't.
I'll take that record.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's a kicker stat. He has to kick the touchbacks. I know teams are running it out less. It's more beneficial to take the touchback, but obviously that's also because your offense is scoring so much and you have so many more kickoffs as well. So just great energy level for him. Hopefully he doesn't start slowing down. But think about it, I know it doesn't work this way, but you just take off his 12 points he scored and 4 field goals. That makes it an 8-point game, completely different game. And then look at the places where he could have missed that 60-yarder. That gives the Eagles the ball at midfield. And who knows what happens then. He misses that 59-yarder, same deal. So just the clutch factor of Brandon Aubrey, and just
for sure, like the faith and trust that the Cowboys organization, McCarthy obviously have in him to go out there and perform and actually like knock those down. Because I totally agree. Like in that position, it's a tough call sometimes to be like, yeah, go kick this 60-yard field goal. I mean, I think the record in the NFL is 63 yards.
I think there's a 63, and that one he kicked was going to be good from 65.
Oh,
like
sure.
It went clear. It didn't just barely make the crossbars.
But I mean, we're talking about like a rookie kid that, I don't know if you've actually seen him kick 60 yards in practice or anything before. I'm guessing you probably have because you sent him out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they said he was good from 58 from pregame, but I mean, it's just like the 60-yarder. It could have been 65 or 66. Like you look at it, if you're looking, okay, he made a 58-yarder and he made it easily. It wasn't barely. So then you're like, okay, he's good from 60. And I think in that position, I mean, at that time you were only up 7-0. It's not like, why the hell not? We're blowing them out. It's 7-0. You're doing good. You'd already stopped them on their first drive, and he's 28. But yeah, you send a rookie kicker out there with
Yeah.
not a lot of football experience in general.
Right.
One season of USFL football. In this situation, this big time, and if he would have missed it, we would have been,
Right.
trying to
Different game.
crucify McCarthy for that. So now the Eagles have the ball midfield ready to go tie the game. And
Yeah.
who
No.
knows what kind of game this is if the Cowboys lose momentum right there.
No. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like just the trust and the faith that McCarthy had in him to make that field goal, and not put them in that position. Unreal. And then for him to like actually do it multiple times in the game, like pay the man. Like pay this man. He
Yeah.
earned that paycheck. Like
Yeah.
hopefully it comes off that rookie deal he's got. I think he's on like it's not necessarily like a rookie deal. It's a
Yeah, because he's just a
3 year
technically an undrafted free
league
agent, I
minimum or
guess.
something. Yeah, but
He'd come.
but
I
still,
don't know the designation if what deal the NFL and USFL have, if there's an official deal or not, or he just comes in as a free agent. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but he'll get
yeah,
tested next week. I feel like being in Buffalo, I don't know what the weather forecast looks like. Just cold. We know it's going to be cold. Hopefully
for
not a
sure.
bunch of
Yeah.
snow. So
It's
a lot
been
of
real
tests.
rainy out there for the last few games. So
Yeah, this team is going to get an ultimate test. I mean, the next week you get better weather, but you're still on grass and you're playing Miami. The defense will be tested, but this offense is going to be tested next week, regardless, because they have relied more on their passing game, which obviously is going to be different when it's cold. And then the field goal, traditionally in Buffalo, the field goal kicking high winds, if not snow, rain. So we'll find. I mean, I know it's fun doing a show now that, the Cowboys have been blowing out teams for weeks, but now they're blowing out a division rival, a good team, a team with the best record before this game. As much as we thought we knew about the Cowboys the last 4 or 5 weeks during this win streak, we're going to learn a lot more the next few weeks because they're playing quality opponents on the road, on grass in inclement weather. So we'll just see how that goes. Any thoughts before we move on to the Kansas City Buffalo Bills controversy?
no,
About
I
the
think
Cowboys in general, or just like upcoming schedule, upcoming game at Buffalo?
yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think this next test at Buffalo is going to be a good one. Obviously, we'll have to wait a little bit longer into the week to see like what the actual weather is going to be like. But like you said, traditionally in Buffalo in December, it's going to be cold. It's almost always windy. They've got like that notoriously hard field to kick in. So that'll be a great test for Aubrey going into that, I think. But I totally expect the Cowboys to win. My Cowboys fandom will probably never leave, so I'm fully expecting them to go out there. And the way the Buffalo Bills have just kind of been just real inconsistent up and down
Yeah,
so far this season, I don't think I'm terribly worried, but it will be a tougher. In all honesty, I feel like I'm anticipating kind of having the same outlook on the game that I had going into the Eagles game, expecting it to probably be harder than it'll probably turn out to be. The way our defense is playing, man, I think we'll just be in Josh Allen's face most of the night. I'm looking to see plenty of hammers and tomahawks thrown to get plenty more turnovers. It's just the way the Cowboys have been playing all season. So I don't expect a whole lot of trouble for them going into Buffalo, but away games you can't count anybody out at home. Everybody at home's always got home field advantage, and they call it that for a reason. So
yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna walk in and just walk out with it or anything, but I fully expect to see kind of a 21-28 kind of game.
Yeah, everything that's been going right for the Cowboys just gets thrown up into question in this environment. Like I said, passing game is their bread and butter on offense. Their kicking game has been so consistent. Them playing on turf and them playing at home. All 4 of those factors change. But what doesn't change is they have a great defense. I think it's a little more comforting that their defense wasn't necessarily shut down last night. They gave up quite a bit of yards. A lot of those drives um, were working for the Eagles, and the Cowboys were able to step up, be ball hawks, get turnovers. And that's, I think, is going to help them in this environment. Just going up against a really good defense from the Bills coming to the against the Cowboys helps you in that scenario. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, getting those third down stops and those defensive turnovers really help. Our offense just get more opportunities. I mean, more times you get the ball and get out there, you kind of control the clock, control the tempo, control the score.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Now, something pretty crazy that happened yesterday with the Kansas City Chiefs and Buffalo Bills game, which it's always crazy when those two teams match up. Was one, the way it ended, two, the play that almost ended it, and then three, Mahomes' reaction, and even Andy Reid's reaction to it, because he's typically, I mean, it's easy to say, hey, he's just a professional when he's winning so much, because you don't get to see that emotion that much. But last night, I think the Bills kick a field goal. They take the lead against Kansas City, and about a minute and a half left. And so
45, I think it was.
Yes, yeah, something like that. It may have been the second or third play. I don't remember how quickly it was, but Patrick Mahomes throws it, just right down the middle of the field. Travis Kelce, he runs about another 10 yards, and then he notices, I can't remember the guy's name. Tony is Kadarius Toney. I bet you everybody in Kansas City knows his name right now, because he screwed up a few times this year. Notices Kadarius Toney's wide open and just passes it over to him, laterals it to him. Amazing play, probably be the play of the year.
Absolutely.
Would probably win the play of the year, SB Awards, sure, if there was still going to be over a minute left. So if Kansas City was able to score that touchdown, hold on off Buffalo from scoring, but it was called back because Kadarius Toney lined up offsides. And Mahomes is upset, not at Toney, at the ref for calling that. And you can understand his frustrations, I guess. Like, it makes sense. Like, people get pissed off. Usually I'm like, I get why they're upset. I get upset all the time. Most people probably wouldn't be able to tell that, outside my wife maybe, that I'm a mellow person and never really get all that pissed off. But I think I hold it in well, which I probably should. That's probably not very healthy for me. But you're not going to hear me say a bunch of controversial, ridiculous stuff, even in, the heat of things. But what are your thoughts on all that? Like, if it would have just been a normal, like if Kelce caught it, didn't lateral it, was tackled, okay, it was like a 30-something yard gain, I think. I don't know that anyone's really pissed off about. I mean, it's a crushing play. The fans aren't going to forget it. You're probably like, damn, Tony, now we got to go deal with you later. But I don't think you get as much hate on the refs if they don't score that touchdown.
Man, okay, like you said, right? Honestly, play of the year, easily, right? No one's really done that. I feel like the last time I saw that play was in like early 2000s, and like Shannon Sharp did something like that with the Broncos for a game-winning play like that. It was, and honestly, if I remember it correctly, it was almost like exactly the same thing. Long pass up the right-hand side of the field.
Boise State did a similar play when they beat Oklahoma. It led up to the Statue of Liberty 2-point conversion or whatever. And I think it was designed where he was going to catch it and toss it off. Surely they've talked about it or practiced it, at least Kelce and some other players. I mean, it'd be really random just to do it out of nowhere.
Kansas City has said that they do a lot of like let players come up with plays and they kind of play around with.
Yeah, because Tony's not going to be expecting that or looking for that ball if there's not some sort of discussion or play before.
And wasn't it last year Kansas City pulled that play? I think Mahomes later said it was called Pokemon, and they ran in the circle around and before they broke the huddle. So I mean, they've been known to do, interesting kind of
Quirky.
schoolhouse yard fun type
Yeah.
plays like this. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was something that like, they had looked at before and tried before even. Tony did seem to be looking right at uh,
Travis Kelce.
Kelsey, thank you. Was like looking right at Kelsey as if he was like ready for that pass anyway. And then after the ladder, I think the lateral was like something like 10 yards or something. But I know Tony took it
It
45
was,
yards
I
to the
mean, it was a
house.
far lateral. I mean, I know
And it
Kelsey
was
has a background in quarterbacking.
it was a good throw, man.
It was
It
a
was a
great throw.
beautiful
Like,
throw.
uh, man, I just thought, what are you like? It was a positive play. It wasn't like there was 2 seconds in the game or whatever. Where like, hey, this is the last play. It was a
Right.
great play. Out of nowhere, he throws it. I'm like, what are you doing? Because it's halfway across the field. It seemed like. But when he's wide open, I mean,
I mean,
and if
fantasy
you've
wise, probably
played it or
because
planned it
I'm not
before,
sure how many points Kelsey actually gets out of that after the lateral and everything, but it was an incredible play. But I think what's more important here is like when we start talking about the fact that Tony was offside, like
yeah,
he was obviously lined up offsides. If you look at the picture, like his foot is a little bit past where the ball is, and I mean his foot is right on like where the ball is. Like that's neutral zone, man. You're in the wrong spot. You got to back up, and I feel like at this point there's a lot of kind of blame game going on, especially with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And honestly, it's a bad look for them. It's a bad look for the Chiefs. It's a bad look for the NFL to kind of be like, oh, it's not fair. They called the rules on
yeah.
us.
What's funny is when Andy Reid said it was embarrassment for the NFL, he's 100% right, but not for the reason he was. He
Right.
was saying it was him. Being a head coach who's won multiple Super Bowls, one of the best coaches in NFL history, probably. I mean, Belichick's better coach than he, or I mean, statistically, has better numbers. But he's right up there to have a coach like that call out the refs. But it wasn't like I even hesitate to call it controversial, because he was 100% offsides. I understand Mahomes' feeling about the call. His comments of you shouldn't, I'm paraphrasing, but the refs shouldn't decide the game like that. You have to let greatness play out or whatever. For one, yeah, he's right, but that's like a little, if they call holding on a play, holding on the defense or something, or even on the offense, and it was a snag, like it was technically, yeah, it was a penalty, but you should let it play out. That's what that's supposed to mean, not when he lines up half a yard offsides. Just ridiculous. And two, on that thought, the flag was thrown as soon as the ball was snapped.
Right.
It's not like they do this amazing play, then they throw a flag. The refs had no clue that this was going to be possibly the play of the year, maybe
Right.
best play in a long time. They had no idea this would be a historic play that would be run on Kelsey's, Mahomes, Tony's career reel for the rest of their lives. They just, the flag went up as soon as he was lined off sides. Anytime, and for Mahomes to go out and say, and I'm a fan of Mahomes, I like Mahomes, but for him to go out and call out the refs and say, hey, you can't stop basically you can't stop greatness. Quit trying to fix the game, or not fix the game, but quit trying to make the game decided off calls like this. When it's like, I just you want me to pick up the flag now because the result of the play was amazing?
No, honestly, that was a big thing for me too, because it was like you said, they threw the flag as soon as the ball was snapped. You can see it on the replay. Flag goes right up in front of the camera, and then he makes it sound like based on the results of the play, when the refs get together to discuss what the penalty was or where it happened or who committed it or whatever, the refs should be like, oh, never mind. What an amazing play. It's like, no, come on, man.
That comment would make sense if it plays out exactly like it does. He doesn't line up off sides, and another player holds one of the defenders, and not a defender that has any chance of making a play on the ball. which we see all the time, clipping or holding, and it didn't even affect the play. Like, what'd you do? I understand if in the moment they see, hey, this is a big play. He just lateral. He's going to score a touchdown. Let's not throw the flag. I can understand in that situation. Like, it didn't affect it. Let's not get in the way of this, like they should. I don't think the refs are out to get them, but yeah, it happened at the beginning of the play. It was an egregious call. It was ridiculous. I think it was Andy Reid who said something that they should have got a warning, which they went through the replay. He had
mentioned they hadn't gotten a warning about like offensive offsides the whole game, and
they
thought they would get one.
That's why receivers will line up and you'll see them look over and raise their hand over the sideline, and that's them checking with the ref, like, "Hey, am I good?" And the ref will tell them or whatever. But
usually give you a thumbs up or like a little backup.
From what I saw, Tony didn't even look.
No, he didn't.
So even if the ref would have gave him a warning, he didn't even look over there.
Honestly, it didn't even look like he gave like a fake check where he's like looking at the ball, but he like points at the ref on the sideline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've definitely seen like players do that before, because I'm like, do you even know if the ref is telling you to back up or not? Like, you're pointing at him to check, but you're not even looking, But I totally agree, because Tony, it doesn't look like he ever looked to the sideline. He only ever looked to the ball, and he was way offside. He was
it wasn't like, okay, his helmet was lined up, like his foot was past the ball. And you had mentioned before the show, like, it was such an egregious call, and like, I get, hey, you should give us a warning, but that's like if you get pulled over for speeding, and you should think you think the police officer should give you a warning, which in a lot of cases they do or whatever. But the way he was lined up off sides, that'd be like, hey, I'm going 70 in a school zone where the speed limit is 35. Of how egregious you're not going to get a warning for that. Yeah, they're acting like it's a technicality. He was barely speeding type situation, and it wasn't. And I get that had no effect on the play whatsoever. Like, he did not get wide open. Kelsey did not catch this ball because he lined up off sides. But the ref just did what he's supposed to do. Hey, he's lined up off sides. That's the point of the game. If we're not going to call that, then what's the point of even having the rule? He threw the flag. Unfortunately, the play, it all transpires how it did, and the ref's not going to go pick up. That would be stupid. Because of the result of the play, I'm going to pick up the flag.
Oh, for sure. If that happened, we would
especially since, again, him lining up offsides had nothing to do with what happened, but especially since he's the one that got the lateral and scored the touchdown as well. Can you imagine the controversy of them picking up the flag or whatever, or not even calling it whatsoever? Yeah. And then, the memes on Twitter showing his foot past the line of scrimmage. Yeah, and what's funny? I thought there was a commercial. It was like right after the game. It was that Travis Kelce commercial where two things at once. And I almost posted thinking, like, man, it would be cool if somebody made a meme with Travis Kelce about that commercial. It'd be like two things at once, a game-winning play and a game-losing play all at the same time. Or something. I'm not creative enough to come up with something funny, but something like that where your game-winning touchdown, possibly. Like, I even thought back when they scored that touchdown, it's like, that's a crazy play before they even pulled it back. But I thought they left a lot of time on the clock for Josh Allen. Like, it probably would have been better. Obviously, it would have been better because of the flag, or it would have been called back. But it would have been better if Kelsey just would have went down. I know you don't give up touchdown, like you score when you can score, but you have a chance to run down the clock more, and you're in a great position to score anyways.
Yeah, it was great. I love the play and everything, but man, I think it's worth noting too that like these calls and stuff, man. Let's not forget that there was like the similar call, the controversial call in the Super Bowl that just won Kansas City the Super Bowl. The whole the holding call on, what was it, like second down, third down?
Yeah,
whatever it was.
That's what I had in mind when I was saying, like, if it was a call like that, I get letting it go, whether you agree with it or not. But
yeah, no, even if it was like a pass interference or something, and like they let it go because you like let them play kind of thing. And and it like, let's say it should have been a pass interference against Kelsey, but they like let him play. Kansas City doesn't get that call, and it doesn't, and they end up losing the game because of it. That's one thing. You can be a little more upset about that. But when your receiver like was obviously offside, and here's my biggest issue with the whole thing. It was 2nd and 10. It was a second down play, right? And they make this huge play, score the touchdown. Like you said, plenty of time left on the clock. I want to say it was just over a minute, like a minute 6 or
Yeah,
something
it was like a
that.
5-yard penalty too, right?
Yeah, and so that ends up resulting in 2nd and 15. They still had
Yeah.
3 downs because they went for it on 4th to try and convert, and they only needed to make like, it wasn't even 20 yards to get into field goal range. I think on that initial 2nd and 10, they only needed to get like 13 yards or something to get to field goal range. It was just beyond like the first down marker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's 2nd and 15, and you still have 3 chances after that play, and it's like, man, instead of being like so in your head about how that play was called back, and don't get me wrong, it was a great play. It's too bad it didn't count. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go back out there and like do your job, man. You got plenty of time. You got timeouts. Like just you don't even have to get that far to get your 3 points and go to overtime.
It makes
Like
sense. Like I could tell you now, seeing how Mahomes was on the sideline, that there's no way they were going to get a first down. There's no way he was able to calm himself down, stay composed, because you saw. Now, of course, if they get the first down after that, I don't know. They would almost, you would have to score a touchdown for him not to be upset like that. But it's like nothing he's saying is necessarily even relevant. Calling out, like, yes, the referees overall this season, it's been kind of wonky. They've made some bad calls and missed some calls. And he brought that up. Like, that has nothing to do with anything. Like, it doesn't matter. You're stopping greatness. They threw the flag before they knew what the play was going to be. If they threw that flag and he wasn't, and it was like, maybe it was like barely, like you could check a technicality, he'd have been offsides. I mean, the ref's not pulling back this amazing play because of that. The refs should never make a decision on whether they should pick a flag up or not because of the result of the play, ever, no matter what. If they saw enough to throw the flag, I'm fine with them picking up flags in general, consulting. They did it twice for the Cowboys last night.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. Like, I would rather them, not be stubborn about it and say, oh yeah, we made a bad call. Let's you're right. You got the better angle. It looked to me like he had face masking or whatever. Like, no. He was grabbing his collar, whatever. But even in this case, like, if they would have picked up the flag because of them, I don't know that, there'd be controversy on Buffalo's side. They would have said, hey, he was lined up off sides. As somebody who's not a fan of Buffalo or Kansas City, it's just kind of neutral. Like, that was a great play. That's cool that they did that. But they would have never said that, hey, we made that decision because of the play. We don't want to stand in the way of greatness, as Patrick Mahomes put it.
No, honestly, I think one of the things we're talking about here too is like, could you imagine? I feel like you even kind of touched on this just a little bit, but could you imagine if it wasn't Tony that was lined up off sides and it was somebody like one of the other receivers that wasn't even in the play? I feel like they would still be obligated to throw the flag, call the penalty, call it back. You know what I mean? Like, even though it wasn't Tony, like he wasn't even involved in the play. And I totally even understand like it almost feels like an irrelevant kind of flag to throw because like they didn't necessarily gain any kind of like advantage over where Tony was lined up. But like you kind of said, like the rules are the rules. And if we're not playing by them, then why have them at all? It doesn't make any sense to me the way like Mahomes and Andy Reid are both just kind of like crying about how this happened. And it's like, man, it was a great play. I don't think anybody's arguing that it wasn't,
Let's say they don't throw the flag.
You've got to do it within the confines of the rules.
Let's say they don't even throw the flag and maybe somebody notices he was offsides and you get those memes. I'd be like, so what? How did that help them in the play?
Yeah.
But it comes down to he threw the flag. One way, it doesn't matter right, wrong, and it's not even up for question. It was 100% a penalty. But he threw the flag. And again, you can't pick up the flag just because it was a crazy thing. And again, I'll go back to, I bet you Mahomes wouldn't be that outraged if Kelsey would have caught the ball. He got tackled, 3 guys on him right before he threw the ball, but he was tackled there and they called it back. You'd be, fans would be pissed off, and they would all be pissed off at Tony more than anything. They wouldn't have thought, because it took a touchdown back. They said, okay, that sucks. Let's redo it. Let's get another first down, But, it's when your adrenaline's running so high after a play like that. Like, I'm not necessarily a Kansas City Chiefs fan. Right. And I just happened, like I was switching back and forth between Sunday Night America or whatever and I watched it live, and, I got pumped up for it. So you go from that amazing high to, let me get this side where I'm not getting in front of the camera, that amazing high to now it's coming back. In reality, yeah, it's 2nd and 15. I think it's a 5-yard, worst case 2nd and 20. And, you just gained, without the lateral, you just gained 20, 30 yards. Yeah. So it's like, let's just relax. Let's do it again. You have plenty of time on the clock. But I think they just let it get in their heads. They got all upset about it, and there was no way. I mean, because those next 3 plays weren't even close.
Two of them were passes to Kelsey that just didn't work out. But no, I absolutely agree. I think it was all in Mahomes' head at that point.
Yeah,
he didn't make good passes. And I mean, don't get me wrong, he was a little bit off for a lot of that game. He wasn't making great passes for a good chunk of the game. I think they only actually had like 1 drop last night, but Kansas City's been like notoriously dropping the ball all season. I think they lead in drops or something like that right now. Mm-hmm. But like I was saying, it's 2nd and 15. You've still got 3 opportunities, and you only need to go like 20 yards to get into field goal range, and you got plenty of time to do it.
And I don't know what their timeout situation was. I have no clue.
I think they had at least 1, maybe 2 at that point, I'm pretty sure. But like, and honestly,
I mean, you were around midfield when all this happened?
Yeah,
somewhere
were, like, right at the 50-yard line.
I don't know. Maybe Andy Reid should have just called a timeout and said, let's regroup, guys. Let's, because obviously 3 plays, they didn't go all 40 seconds, I would assume. I mean, you're talking about 2 minutes after it happened, maybe 3 minutes. Turnover. Mahomes is on the sideline. He had to be held back from screaming at the ref. He was not in any mindset to do that.
Not at all. And I mean, to play a little bit of devil's advocate, I guess, like I can understand Mahomes's like frustration. It's been a rough couple of weeks.
100%.
They've lost 4 out of their last 6, I think it is, 2 in a row now. I can understand, especially when you're like frustrated because some of it has to do with like bad officiating, just not getting the calls or whatever, but like in this particular case, it's like, it's not bad officiating. This is bad playing, like,
and that's like
you're
Tony's
just lined up offside. You're wrong.
That's like Tony's 3rd high profile in the moment bonehead play so far this year.
And I think it's worth noting too that like Andy Reid and Mahomes both haven't even denied that he was lined up offside. I think they accept the fact that he was in fact
exactly
offside.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. He should have got a warning. The ref shouldn't.
And it's like, no, man, play by the rules.
And if it was a controversial technicality, I think we would all be like, okay, we get it. I'm glad it didn't happen to my team type of deal. Like, hey, that sucks. But it's
it's got Des caught it type vibes all over.
Yeah, and nobody's saying, man, the Bills shouldn't have won that game. I think most people wish it wouldn't have happened because it's such a great play. But I get it. In the moment, you're upset. There's some things that go through my head that I want to say sometimes that I don't. And now imagine this is my profession. It's competition. I've done this all my life. Now, take how you get frustrated in your everyday life to 1,000 and try to compose yourself. But I mean, I think by the time they got up to the podium, I think they've had time to cool off, at least a little bit of time. I understand it's right after the game. They want that raw emotion, those reactions. But there's somebody on the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, I know it's your head coach and Mahomes. They're the 2 most important people on this roster, but you have to have somebody that say, hey, before y'all go up there, just calm down. Understand. I'm thinking today, I assume that Mahomes and Andy Reid are a little bit embarrassed going
Oh,
back. Like,
I would
I'm sure they're
imagine
pissed about
so.
it. It's all
I'm sure
frustrating,
they
but
woke up this morning feeling
like,
very
crap, I shouldn't have
differently
said that.
about.
Um, I mean, they should be frustrated at Tony, if anything. Um,
Yeah,
but,
for
but,
sure.
but man,
Because I mean, 99% of the time when you line up as a receiver, like since high school, like even when I played receiver in high school, you get to the line and like the first thing you would do, right, was just like check with the line judge. Hey, am I good? And he would use, like I just said, like earlier, it's like he would give you like this little backup signal or something, or it'd be like, you're good,
and Tony should have
right there,
known. I mean,
whatever,
looking at the
you know?
ball, that he's offside.
Yeah, and you see it
Um,
in the NFL all the time during the games anyway, right? Or receiver reaches over to the sideline, or even the guys that like kind of stick their arm behind them to show
yeah,
that like they're off the line, making sure they're good with the ref. But I mean, so late in the game, it's critical. It didn't make sense to me that Tony didn't even check to make sure he was, you know. But I mean, you can whine about the referees all you want. When they do a good job making the right call, it's not their fault. Like, it is what it is, man. You're just gonna have
yeah.
to. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing for him, he should have let it go when the play happened and had thick skin then. Unfortunately, he's gonna have to have thicker skin and just move on to next week. Like
Yeah.
it's just, it is what it
Yeah,
is, man.
because now I mean, you have a division lead, but you're only a game ahead of the Broncos in your own
Yeah.
division.
Oh, and the
Um,
AFC is tight right now, man.
and
So
really, what
tight.
is it, like 6, 7, and 6 teams? So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through each team and talk about tiebreakers with
No,
Kansas City,
no.
but you're theoretically like 2 games and you're out of the playoffs
Yeah.
right now. I don't know off the top of my head their schedule, but
And there's
I'm
four
sure they're going to
left in
play
the
the
season.
Broncos here pretty soon. There's 4 games left this year.
Yeah, 4 games left in the season, and
Yeah, you just need
all
to
all
relax and
the
quit
all the
complaining about.
records are like
Yeah,
one win of each other. So
yeah, and Baltimore's not slowing down. It
it's
doesn't look
yeah,
like
it's going to be
Denver's
some great
slowing down.
football these next few weeks. It's going to be
Yeah,
it's
it's
going to be a lot of
interesting
fun.
talking so much. I guess it's because it's Mahomes, it's the Chiefs, it's how he reacted. I like I said, I've never seen him react that way. I'm sure this isn't abnormal for him, but maybe he holds it off until locker room or in private or something, just not on the sideline.
No, I
Um,
totally agree. Honestly, feeling that way after some tough losses, and even
it feels like it's
personally
it's come to
feeling.
a boiling point that it wasn't
Yeah.
just that. It
No,
feels like it's
that's
everything.
exactly what I think it was. It was kind of that boiling point, and he was, super frustrated about it. And I'm sure it also had to do with other things, based on, kind of how their offense has been performing and, or underperforming in this case, and, finally something kind of goes right for you, but, it's taken away. I can understand totally being frustrated with the refs and everything in that moment, but man, I mean, first of all, it's the NFL. We've talked about how critical everyone is really of the quarterbacks of any team, and when you're kind of a championship Super Bowl winning team, they're going to be even more critical of you. So, I mean, it's already a little bit tough to perform and you're underperforming and everything. I can understand that boiling point coming. You want to win, you're competitive, you got that, nature and spirit in you and everything. And it feels like the refs kind of keep taking it from you. But I totally agree. In that situation coming out of the game and everything, maybe even be like, I don't want to talk about this like tonight kind of
Yeah.
thing. Maybe talk about it tomorrow, sleep on it,
There's
and
ways to say, man, get across what you want. Just say, like, it's unfortunate how that had to
right?
happen,
Yeah.
and
And you can
it's
totally feel the
true.
way you feel about getting
Yeah.
robbed and everything and talk to your teammates and your coaches about that and everything. But just, I don't know,
They
maybe
blatantly
be a little
went
more
at
PG
the
at
refs,
the,
yeah.
yeah,
And now the NFL is going to have to make a decision. I don't know if it's. I mean, by the time this comes out, it's probably already, fines have come down because when refs make bad
very
calls
possible.
and it's controversial like this, the NFL can't just go fine. I mean, there's a referee union. They have contracts and rules, but this is embarrassing for the NFL. And the NFL needs this. Mahomes and Andy Reid are under the NFL's jurisdiction. Um, so whatever that turns into, a stupid $10,000 fine, which is nothing for either of them. But um,
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily calling for it like it's demanding anything. I don't care one way or the other. I just think it's interesting. We're spending half of our episode talking about something that really wasn't all that controversial. And not
Right.
the call on
Yeah.
the field or the play. It was just happened to be a big play, and Mahomes' reaction to it.
Yeah, no, the
That's
reaction
cool.
to it, I think, is really what everybody's talking about. I think we all agree. Tony was offsides. The play doesn't count. And honestly, I'm my biggest thing. I'm going to keep saying it. It's not like it was a fourth down play. It wasn't the last play of the last possession for
Yeah,
the
regroup.
Chiefs and Mahomes.
Just
It was
regroup.
2nd and 15 after that, man. Like you had three more shots and you didn't perform. You didn't come through. It happens, and it's unfortunate. But to say that on that 2nd and 10 play, the refs like stole the game from you and gave it to the Bills, I think is
See, I
outrageous,
have that game
outlandish.
recorded. I'm going to go back and look and see the timeout situation.
Yeah,
And
I don't
exactly how
necessarily remember
much
the timeouts, but I do
time was on the
remember it was
clock.
second
I
and
mean, there's
ten.
plenty of time, and I understand you don't want to use your
Yeah,
last timeout for that, especially since was it a field goal to tie the game? Is that right? They're down by 3.
yeah, but that's the part that I did look at. I was checking the replay. But the play was 2nd and 10. They only needed to
Okay.
go maybe 15 yards to get into field goal
So
range.
if
Then it
they
became
have
second and
3 timeouts,
15.
and maybe the argument can be made if they had at least 2
I know
timeouts,
they
that
didn't
this
have
is all.
three. I know they had at least two
So
because of
this is may all
the
be on Andy Reid, that
yeah.
he should have just
I know
called a
they
timeout
I
and
know
said,
they didn't have
let's
three because they
calm
had that
down.
challenge play
Oh,
earlier.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, so they couldn't
Um,
have had 3.
so I can't remember if he had one or two timeouts then, but I just remember because I was looking at it and I was like, you were so close to your field goal range. It's literally on the screen when they snap the ball for the
Yeah.
Kelsey lateral play, and it's like you didn't have that far to go, and then it's a like you said, it's a 5 yard penalty, so you're at second and
And,
15. You still had three
yeah.
tries to go 20 yards,
And we both
and you
could
just
tell how flustered the team was. And I mean,
yeah
you know, being Andy Reid and it's his team, he would know. Again, I'm not criticizing him. I'm just wondering if that was, possibly an option. I know hindsight's 2020 and we could say whatever. But it's not even an issue if Mahomes just comes back and throws another dart to Kelsey for the first down and it just keeps going. But yeah, we will definitely keep up to date on what might come down to it. We may talk about this game in the future if it comes down to, hey, Kansas City loses a couple more because they just can't get over it or something. I'm not sure, but that's what we're here. We're two out of shape, middle-aged guys.
We're talking about the controversies.
Yeah, we're two middle-aged guys who sit on our ass and probably watch Cowboys in Buffalo. And if Dak has a bad game and it's 10 degrees, we're gonna call him a loser. And we're sitting on our couch eating pizza in the warm
with my beer.
And beer and whiskey or something in the warmth of our own house, saying, "What a loser! How come?" Hey, that's just why we get to be podcasters.
If I ran a 40-yard dash, that'd be it for me for the day. I'd be like, cooked.
For the day, I'm not sure I could run a 40-yard. No, I could. I don't know if I could run 40 yards full blast. I'm trying to. I could jog 40 yards, but if you were like run as fast as you can, I know. We just got a dog like 8 months ago, a golden retriever. He's crazy energetic, and the kid, we'll take him for a walk, and sometimes the kids are riding their bike, and they'll say like, "Run, see if you can outrun him or whatever." So I'll just run as fast as I can, and I know it's not even a quarter of the way down the road, so I'm like, that's maybe 30 yards, if that, and I'm not running as fast as I can. We can.
I can't. I can't even remember what it was. It was some kind of turnover for some game a couple weeks ago, and guy had to go the whole yard, right? Like full 100 yards. And by the time he got to about 80, 90 yards, you could really see him like starting to slow down and everything. And I remember like obnoxiously even being like,
"You're so slow.
Couldn't even make it 100 yards. Like it's the whole field, man. Like y'all should be practicing 100-yard sprints, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, I swear if I had to run 100 yards, I wouldn't make it. If I got to 50 yards and started walking the rest of the way, I'd be impressed. I'm not gonna lie. I would never make it sprinting 100 yards.
That might be a good bet payoff. If we come up to wagering something, is go up to one of these high school fields and see how far we can run.
Next year's fantasy football draft order.
That's not a bad idea.
We'll do 40 times. Post it on TikTok, YouTube, right here.
Yeah, but we'll just post like the last 10 yards of that 40-yard. I'd like to go last. I'd like to go last just to see. I'll go last just to see what I need to beat. Do I even need to run full speed like if a couple of y'all don't even make it, maybe it's like, hey, I'll just jog this out just
Right. Yeah.
guys, thanks for listening to this episode. Be sure to follow us, subscribe, whatever terminology you want to use on YouTube, social media. Be sure to like this episode, share it with your friends, and we'll be back next week, hopefully with Chris talking Cowboys win over Buffalo.
Yeah.
Until next time, guys, we'll see you later.
Bye.